I think it's time for the American people to get focused that there are some decisions being made now without protectionism, without nativism, but legitimate public interest that will create jobs in America. I thank the chair and yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak in support of the American Jobs Act. Rarely is our economy discussed these days without mention of the 14 million Americans that are currently out of work and searching for a job. But as you know from your home state, this isn't just a statistic. It's real people, people who are struggling, people who have had their hours cut, people who may have worked at a job for a very long time and poof, it's gone away. That's what this is about. 2 years after the recession officially ended by the accounts, unemployment is still stubbornly high at 9.1%, 9.1%. And when you factor those that are working full-time because they can't find a full-time job, those numbers go much higher, up towards 16%. Now, my home state, the state of Minnesota, is much better. We have an unemployment rate of 7.2%, but there are still too many people out of work or who are struggling with reduced hours at their jobs. While no group of workers has been spared by the high rates of long-term unemployment, the hardest hit have been older workers, those with a high school diploma, and then those, which I'm sure you have seen, in the construction trades. They have been hit very hard. We also have had issues up with our timber industry in northern Minnesota. We've had some trouble in our iron ore mines, but they are bouncing back. But the biggest problem that I've heard is for those in the construction industry. It's my firm belief, Mr. President, the role of Congress is to promote the interests of the American people. And the American people have said loud and clear that we need to focus on initiatives that stimulate job creation, in particular private sector job creation. In fact, the majority of Americans want us to pass the American Jobs Act that we are debating today. When Americans are asked about specific provisions in the bill, that message is even clearer. 74% say that they support providing money to state governments to allow them to hire teachers and first responders. 65% say that they support cutting the payroll tax for all American workers. 64% say that they support increased spending to build and repair roads, bridges, and schools. Of course, no one knows that better than me in my state. I live just a few blocks from that bridge that collapsed in the middle of a summer day. And as I said that day, a bridge just shouldn't fall down in the middle of America, but that's what happened. And so obviously people in my state understand the need to continue funding bridges and roads. 58% of Americans say that they support cutting the payroll tax for all American businesses. But passing this bill isn't the right thing to do just because it is popular. It's the right thing to do because it will have a positive impact on our economy. Economists from across the political spectrum agree that steps taken in this legislation would increase economic activity and add to jobs. According to Mark Zandi, chief economist of Moody's, the plan, and these are his words, the plan would add 2 percentage points to GDP growth next year, add 1.9 million jobs, and cut the employment rate by a percentage point. That's an economist's words, not mine. It would accomplish this by initiating targeted measures, many of which have garnered overwhelming bipartisan support in the past. The employee payroll tax cut that would be extended under the American Jobs Act was originally introduced by my friends Senator Schumer and Senator Hatch. It was ultimately included in the HIRE Act, which overwhelmingly passed the Senate by a 68-29 vote early in 2010. Just over a year ago, it was extended again. This time, 139 House Democrats and 138 House Republicans joined in to support it. In the Senate, 37 Republican senators joined 43 Democratic senators in voting for the extension. Cutting the payroll tax for all American businesses is another idea that has gained strong bipartisan support. In fact, it has been the centerpiece of several jobs packages put forward by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And we all know the neglected state of our nation's infrastructure. Crumbling infrastructure just doesn't threaten public safety as it did in Minnesota when that bridge collapsed. It also weakens our economy. Congestion and inefficiencies in our transportation network limit our ability to get goods to market. We all know that one of the main ways we're going to get out of this downturn is with exports. Well, to truly have the kind of exports that we want to see in this country, we have to be able to take those products and get them on a truck or get them on a train and get them to a port and get them across the sea or get them on an airplane. And the only way we're going to do that is if we have a transportation system that matches the economic system that we want to be. The congestion, the inefficiencies in transportation exacerbate the divide between urban and rural America. They constrain economic development and competitiveness, and they reduce productivity as workers idle in traffic. Americans spent a collective 4.2 billion hours a year stuck in traffic. 4.2 billion hours a year stuck in traffic, at the cost to the economy of $78.2 billion, or $710 per motorist. Think about that. Over $700 per motorist simply because of people waiting in line on our highways. What better way to get our struggling economy back on track than to build the 21st century transportation network that our economy demands while creating jobs in the construction industry, which, as I mentioned, has been one of the hardest hit industries. The American Jobs Act would establish the Infrastructure Bank as a new financing authority to help address some of our nation's most important transportation projects. Road, freight rail, and water projects in my state of Minnesota and across the nation would benefit from access to loans and loan guarantees from this public-private partnership. This approach has bipartisan support here in the Senate, as do the other proposals I discussed. And in March of this year, U.S. Chamber of Commerce President Tom Donahue endorsed the idea, saying this: "A national infrastructure bank is a great place to start securing the funding we need to increase our mobility, create jobs, and enhance our global competitiveness." So pieces of this bill have been supported by the Chamber. Pieces of this bill have been supported by my Republican colleagues. In fact, the major provisions of this bill have been supported on a bipartisan basis. There are other great ideas in this bill as well, such as an extension of the bonus depreciation, which would allow businesses to continue to immediately write off the cost of investments in new property and equipment. I have to say this was the one thing, Mr. President, when I met with our small businesses over the last few years, this was the one thing they kept mentioning, that this was very helpful for them and would create an incentive for them to invest in equipment. This bill also includes a Returning Heroes Hiring Tax Credit for veterans, which would provide a tax credit up to $9,600 to encourage companies to hire unemployed veterans. At a time when unemployed veterans of Iraq stands at 11.7%, the importance of a provision like this is clear. There is no reason that those people who served our country should have to come back to this country and not have a job. When they signed up to serve our country, there wasn't a waiting line. And when they come back to America and they need a job or they need college or they need health care, there shouldn't be a waiting line in the United States. So I'm very glad that this provision is included in this bill to create an incentive to hire the returning veterans. The post-9/11 time period is the most important when you look at the unemployment rate. With our economy struggling and 14 million Americans still out of work, Minnesotans want Congress to put the politics aside and come together to move our economy forward. It's time to step up and show some leadership. It's time for us to work together to show the American people that Washington isn't broken, that instead we're willing to put aside our politics to do what we were elected to do what is right for America. I would urge my colleagues to vote for this important piece of legislation that would put Americans to work, would help our struggling economy to get back on track. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Senator from Ohio is recognized.
Mr. President, we're in morning business.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. In an hour or so, the Senate will be voting, an hour and a half maybe, on on our currency bill, S-1619, the bipartisan bill that I'm the prime sponsor with Senator Schumer and Senator Graham and Senator Sessions and a whole host of other senators in both parties, Senator Stabenow, Senator Snowe, Senator Collins, Senator Hagan. I thank my colleagues for the vote last week, well in excess of 60 votes, bipartisan votes, allowing us to consider this measure. I'm struck by some of my colleagues, though, who dismiss this bill. There are opponents to this bill. There are always people who don't want to stand up to China, and I think they are, frankly, undercutting our ability to stop the hemorrhaging on manufacturing jobs. That's their decision to make. But I'm struck by how some of my colleagues dismiss this legislation, quote, as a message bill. I mean, I don't know what a message bill means to anybody outside of Washington, D.C., but what I know this bill is all about is this is a jobs bill. We've lost. I was just talking to an anchor on MSNBC who said, and he's right, that we've lost almost 3 million jobs to China in the last decade, most of those manufacturing jobs. So this isn't a message bill. This is legislation finally standing up to the Chinese, finally saying, no, you're not going to game the currency system. No, you're not going to export from China into our market and have a 25 or 30 or 35% subsidy. No, you're not going to put up a tariff using currency as that tariff, by and large, in effect, to add 25 or 30 or 35% to the cost of an American good sold into China. This legislation is all about jobs. It's about jobs in industries that have been holding on for dear life, like paper and steel and tires and aluminum. But it's not just paper and steel and tires and aluminum. It's no longer a trade deficit. We no longer have a trade deficit in T-shirts and bicycles. This trade deficit with China, which has more than tripled in the last decade, it's now almost $800 million a day. That means every day companies that we buy $800 million more in Santa Fe and in Dayton than we sell to China. Every day we buy $800 million more than we sell. We can't keep doing that as a nation. But this trade deficit with China has risen through the economic food chain all the way to advanced technology products. It's not just tires and steel, as important as they still are to many, many, many workers in this country. It's also jobs in solar and wind and clean energy component manufacturing, in the auto supply chain, the aerospace supply chain. Those are millions of jobs around the country. This legislation, what this means in so many ways is we can be competitive on all fronts with China and Germany, Japan. We can compete on productivity. We have skilled workers. We have world-class infrastructures. But how do you compete against a 25 to 30% subsidy? How can workers in Fenley who make tires, or Chillicothe who make paper, or Defiance who make engines, how can they compete against a build-in subsidy? Senator Merkley of Oregon, a leader on this legislation, noted that currency manipulation is a 20 to 30% tax on our exports. So don't forget, if a company in Albuquerque or in Atlanta or in Ashtabula makes a product and sends it to China, it costs 25 or 30% more because they put a currency tariff on that product. I find it hard to believe that some of my colleagues, and there were about 30 of them, would want to continue this tax on our exporters. That's what it is. It's pure and simple. It's a tariff. It's a tax on our exporters trying to sell things into the Chinese market. Senator Feinstein spoke about the compelling image she saw from her San Francisco home. She said, looking out at the San Francisco Bay, she counted the cargo ships departing for Asia, half filled with mostly scrap paper and other scrap, while the incoming ships are filled with goods. What does that tell you? It tells you that we buy $800 million a day more from China than we sell to China. And it's not because our workers aren't productive. It's not because our companies aren't efficient. It's not because our scientists and researchers aren't the most innovative in the world. It's because China has a 25 to 30 to 35% tax on our products going there and a subsidy on their products coming here. That's pretty pure and simple, Mr. President. For a state like mine, trying to get a foothold on the clean energy technology and research and production, the race against China will only accelerate in the coming years. That's why it's imperative we don't sit idly by. This is no message bill. This is substantive level the playing field legislation. We don't sit idly by while China subsidizes its exports through its currency regime. Let me speak, as a sponsor of this bill, specifically about some other charges that have been made about the bill. Some of my colleagues note China's currency has increased about 30% in recent years. No doubt the RMB has appreciated. Since the Senate acted in 2005, the RMB, the Chinese currency, has appreciated about 30%. But as the Peterson Institute for International Economics has shown, full disclosure, the Peterson Institute of Economics is not a anti-free trade, pro-fair trade, liberal, progressive, socialist. It's a middle of the road, mostly free trade organization staffed by sort of elite economists in the Northeast. Even the Peterson Institute for International Economics has shown it's more valued, the RMB is more undervalued than just a year ago because of China's rapid growth the past few years, as well as inflation and productivity. The Peterson Institute estimates that China's currency manipulation increased from 24% in 2010 to 28.5% in 2011, despite the fact that China's real exchange rate appreciated over the past year. What that means, Mr. President, is that it's getting worse. So if we want to call this a message amendment, call it whatever you want. That doesn't work with the American public. It may work with some in this institution. But the fact is, this is getting worse, and that means that our manufacturers, the Bennett brothers in Brunswick, Ohio, I'll tell you about in a moment. The Bennett brothers came to me. We're talking to them in Northeast Ohio fairly recently, a couple weeks ago. They run a company, family company, has been around about 35 years in Northeast Ohio, and this company is called Automation Tool and Die. They were about to have $1 million sale to an American company that was looking for their products, and at the last minute the Chinese came in and undercut them by 20%. Why could they do that? Because they got a 25%, 30% subsidy bonus because of their currency. The point is that China is massively and increasingly intervening in its currency. The International Monetary Fund knows it. The IMF estimated that China's global current account surplus, which is the broadest measure of its trade balance, will more than double from $300 billion in 2010 to $852 billion in 2016. So as I said, the problem is getting worse. If one thing is clear since the Senate voted in 2005 to slap tariffs on Chinese goods, it's this. The RMB is pegged to American political pressure. If we can predict anything, we know that if we take the pressure off, China will get worse. If we can predict another thing, we know that if this passes and begins to work its way through the House to the President's desk, that the Chinese will respond by significantly appreciating its currency. Some of my colleagues wring their hands that we might set off a trade war. Some say this is the second coming of Smoot-Hawley. Now, facts are clear that it's very different from that. When Smoot-Hawley was enacted by the Congress, in those days, the U.S. had a trade surplus. So countries around the world were angered that while we had a trade surplus, we were enacting Smoot-Hawley more tariffs. Today, we have the largest trade deficit, one of the largest trade deficits in American history, in world history. So we're in a very, very different position. But as Senator Sessions has said, when he hears this criticism of that we might set up a trade war, he says, we've been in a trade war for a long time in this country, and the Chinese seem to be doing very, very well. But they have declared a trade war. That's why they do this with their currency. That's why they subsidize water and paper and steel and capital and land. It features spies, this trade war. It features theft of intellectual property, and it features that 30% stealth subsidy that gets applied to every export China ships to the United States. So we're in a trade war. The only difference is that today, on the floor of the United States Senate, we've taken a big step toward abandoning the failed tactic of unilateral disarmament. Workers in my state know we've been waving the white flag in this trade war. To my friends who warn of a trade war, I want to remind them that the United States has more leverage than any of China's trading partners, as China is overly dependent on access to our market. This isn't Smoot-Hawley, as some will want you to believe. This legislation doesn't mandate sanctions against China and any other nation. It does not slap an across-the-board tariff, which the Senate considered doing once, on Chinese imports tomorrow, as China has effectively done to ours. If this bill becomes law, the duties would apply currently to less than 3% of Chinese imports. And when you think about this, Mr. President, the Chinese of all Chinese exports, about 1/3 of them come to the United States. If Senator Durbin's in business in Chicago and he has a company where he has a customer in his company that buys 1/3 of all of their goods, he's going to be good to that customer. He's not going to declare war on that customer. The Chinese aren't going to declare economic trade war on us because we buy so many of their exports.
Senator's 10 minutes has expired.
Yes, except for one additional minute, Mr. President.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I'll close with this, Mr. President. If China's found to be manipulating its currency, this bill sets in motion a series of steps to place pressure on the Chinese government to stop rigging the exchange rate in its favor. It's pretty simple. C. Fred Bergsten of the Peterson Institute, and I'll close with this, said, to be sure, some American corporations will fret that these actions would needlessly antagonize the Chinese and threaten a trade war. I believe these fears are overblown. The real threat to the world trade system is, in fact, the protectionist policies of other countries and the vast trade imbalances that result, including the undervalued currency. Even Mitt Romney said, taking action to remove protectionist market distortions wouldn't result in a trade war, but failing to act will mean that the U.S. has accepted trade surrender. We can vote yes on S1619 today. It will mean we'll stand up to the Chinese. More importantly, it will mean a victory for American workers and especially for American small manufacturers. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Illinois is recognized.
Mr. President, I simply want to talk briefly about the breaking news today that the Justice Department and our Attorney General, Eric Holder, announced that a plan was conceived, sponsored, and directed from Iran to conduct bombings in Washington, D.C., and potentially also in Buenos Aires, Argentina. This is from a government that Secretary of State Clinton designated as a state sponsor of terror, and is what I would think of as a very audacious, forward-leaning plan to attack the United States, its people, and foreign embassies here in the nation's capital. Now, tomorrow in the Senate Banking Committee, we will meet with our Undersecretary of the Treasury, a very able man named David Cohen. And I would urge the administration to look at what is the most effective sanction currently pending on our docket against the terrorists in Iran. Earlier this year, we had 92 senators, just about the entire Senate, sign a letter to the President calling for the Treasury Department to execute a strategy to collapse the Central Bank of Iran. These are the paymasters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the intelligence service of Iran, the MOIS, that appear to be involved in the plot that the Attorney General revealed today. It's that action to cut the Central Bank of Iran off from the central payment backbone of the Federal Reserve, obviously to do it in cooperation with Saudi and Israeli officials, and given indications from London, from Paris, and from Berlin, probable action by our NATO allies as well to cripple Iran's currency, to make sure that what's called Bank Merkaz has no access to the payment mechanisms of the West, will lead to a collapse of its currency. I applaud David Cohen for designating at least 5 individuals as sponsors of terror who were part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Force, Quds Force, but I think this doesn't go far enough. With the Attorney General of the United States directly blaming the government of Iran for this bomb plot against targets in the capital city of the United States, it's clear with overwhelming bipartisan support and 92 senators behind the effort to collapse the Central Bank of Iran, that would be an effective, non-military way to address what is clearly an utterly irresponsible and largely out of control IRGC and MOIS who are seeking to attack American targets. And with that, I yield back.
Mr. President.
Majority Whip is recognized.
Mr. President, before speaking on the issue that brought me to the floor, let me commend my colleague from Illinois for speaking out about this Iranian plot, state-sponsored Iranian plot, to destroy the Saudi and Israeli embassies here in Washington, D.C. This is an outrage that they would reach this far, this obviously, into the United States. We know that they have backed terrorism forever, as my colleague said, recognized by our government as a state sponsor of terrorism. We need to heighten the sanctions on Iran and make it clear that this type of action will not be countenanced. Many of us still recall that it's only a few days after the 10th anniversary of 9/11, the last time when terrorists decided they would strike here in the United States. Regardless of where the embassy, whether the embassy is for the United States, it is in the United States. And being here, it is a protected property of our nation. So I would say to the administration, to back up my colleague from Illinois, let us look for every available means to let the Iranians know that this conduct is not only unacceptable, but we will do everything we can to disable them through sanctions from any further actions along these lines. And Mr. President, I ask that the remainder of my statement be placed in a separate part of the record. I ask consent for that.
Without objection.
Mr. President, this afternoon, the Republican leader of the Senate came to the floor to talk about a vote we're going to have later this afternoon. It's a vote which is historically important. We all know the state of our economy. We're in a position now with 14 million Americans out of work, 9.1% unemployment. Private sector jobs are going up, but so slowly that it really isn't getting us back into the kind of economic progress that we need. We listen monthly as the unemployment statistics come out, and we are reminded of the weakness of our economy. We have to do something. The choices are to allow this economy to languish or to decline or to step up and do something. President Obama has decided that he needs to lead on this issue and bring together Democrats and Republicans for that purpose. He spoke to a joint session of Congress that we attended. It was widely reported. He said, I'm going to put my best ideas on the table, and I invite the Republicans to do the same. We cannot stand idly by and do nothing. The President put his proposal forward. It was very clear what he wanted to do. And he reminded the Republicans that many of the things he proposed were actually ideas they had endorsed in the past. And we waited. And we waited. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid, when this vote is taken, you will find that few, if any, Republican senators will support any effort to try to create jobs in the United States as President Obama has proposed. The President has made his position clear. Those of us who will vote in support of the President's plan have made our positions clear, but the position on the other side of the aisle is becoming increasingly clear as well. And it really comes down to two things. First, the Republicans will not countenance, approve, or even consider $1 more in taxes for the wealthiest people in America. For them, that is unacceptable. It is better to do nothing than to impose $1 more in taxes on people making over $1 million a year. They've said that consistently at every level of the Republican Party. It doesn't reflect the feeling of Republicans in America. 59% of them believe the President's right. It's not unfair to ask those who are making over $1 million a year to share the burden and sacrifice of moving the economy forward. Independents feel strongly about it, and obviously Democrats do as well. The only Republicans who don't share that belief happen to serve in the United States Senate, and they believe that $1 more in taxes to pay for the President's jobs program, if it came from the accounts of people making over $1 million a year, is unfair. So we know they're clear on that position. But there's a second position that the Republicans have taken that is equally clear. They are prepared to oppose any ideas coming from the Obama administration, even ideas that they have conceived and voted for in the past. I asked my staff to take a look at some of the proposals of President Obama in his jobs bill, which will come up later this afternoon, and see what the record was on the Republican side. It's interesting. Senator McConnell and 32 of his Republican colleagues supported President Bush's Economic Stimulus Act of 2008. It included tax rebates for individuals, which we'll find in the Obama plan, tax cuts for small business, which we find in the Obama plan, and no offset, incidentally. It wasn't paid for. It added directly to the deficit. Senator McConnell and 32 of his Republican colleagues voted for that because it had President Bush's name associated with it. I'm afraid most, if not all of them, will vote against this proposal because President Obama has brought it forward. Republicans have supported a payroll tax consistently in the past. Here's what Senator McConnell said on Fox News in January of 2009. If you want a quick answer to the question of what would I do, I'd have a payroll tax holiday, Senator McConnell said, for a year or two that would put taxes in the hands of everybody who has a job, whether they pay income taxes or not. And of course, businesses pay the payroll tax too, so it would be both a business tax cut and an individual tax cut immediately. Mr. President, that's the centerpiece of President Obama's jobs plan. It's a plan that was criticized on the floor this morning by Senator McConnell. The approach the President's taking is exactly what Senator McConnell said when he was speaking in the bosom of the Lodge at Fox News in January of 2009. Republicans have supported federal help to states. I won't go through the list, but they have in the past. And incidentally, it used to be dogmatic that when it came to building infrastructure in America, roads and highways and bridges and ports and airports, it was a bipartisan issue. When the President puts it in his jobs bill, it is rejected. And you know what the Republicans say about the President's jobs bill? You know, we've tried all this before and it didn't work, so let's not try it again. So they are summarily rejecting payroll tax cuts for families that they have supported in the past. They're rejecting tax cuts for businesses to hire the unemployed, even unemployed veterans, which they have supported in the past. They are rejecting the notion that we need to build America's infrastructure for the future of our economy. And they have basically said that when it comes to trying to make this economy move forward, the only thing they want to do is to pass a trade agreement. We'll consider 3 of those trade agreements tomorrow. At least 2, maybe all of them, are likely to pass. How quickly do the Republicans think there'll be a turnaround in the economy if we start increasing our trade with Korea, Colombia, or Panama? It may increase trade, but certainly not in the near term, and certainly not to the benefit of 14 million Americans, 14 million Americans who are currently unemployed. So, Mr. President, it comes down to this. We're going to have a vote later this afternoon. It's going to be a vote on President Obama's jobs proposal. He has spoken to it clearly in a joint session of Congress. He has taken his case to the American people, and he has included provisions which the Republicans have historically supported. And I'm afraid they're going to walk away from this. The Republican approach to this is to do nothing, absolutely nothing. Protect millionaires from tax increases, and don't give President Obama a victory. Well, I'll tell you, this is not about a victory for President Obama. It's a victory for unemployed people across America, that we would do something specific, something direct, something that will have a measurable impact in creating jobs. I'm troubled that the Republican approach, as Senator McConnell described it, is one of just say no. That is the Republican answer to the weakness of our economy. He talks about the tax hike that is included in our bill. That tax hike is a surtax on those making over $1 million of income of 5.6%. It is not too much a sacrifice to ask from those who are the most well-off in America. When the senator from Kentucky comes and tells us that the earlier stimulus bill failed, I would say to him, remember, over 40% of that bill consisted of tax cuts, something that most Republicans usually support. It also invested in America in ways that will pay off for years to come. For example, the stimulus bill paid for and built a new terminal at the Peoria International Airport. It's a terminal that created jobs today and will serve that community for decades to come. That stimulus bill has also led to the creation of an intermodal center in Bloomington-Normal in downstate Illinois, a proposal that will create jobs now for construction and build for transportation in that community for decades to come. So for that stimulus to be dismissed as not creating results, I'm afraid Senator McConnell needs to journey a little bit north of Kentucky, and we'll show him results in Illinois and all across the United States. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from New York
I
is
ask
recognized.
unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, and I thank my colleague from Illinois for his remarks. In a few minutes, we're going to vote on a bill that could actually change the course of how we trade with China. For a decade, getting worse every year, China has taken advantage of America in every way. Currency is at the top of the list, but it's been the theft of intellectual property. It's been the subsidy of indigenous Chinese businesses. It's been monopolizing things like rare earth. It's been excluding American products from China when those products would have a competitive advantage. And for the first time, this body, in a bipartisan way, has the ability to say enough is enough. Uncle Sam is no longer Uncle Sap. We are going to create fair trade with China. This relates to our future because it no longer is competition over shoes or clothing or furniture, labor-intensive businesses. It's competition over the most high-end things we do. And our companies can win and create jobs here in America if China plays by the rules and plays fairly. But everyone who has been up close to the way the Chinese operate know that that will not happen by persuasion, by multilateral talks, by wishing it were so, or even by the healing of time. It will only happen if America stands up for itself, for fairness, for equal treatment. And for the first time, we have the opportunity to get that to happen. Some say this is a symbolic bill. It is not. If we pass this bill by a bipartisan majority, I'll tell you what will happen, Mr. President. The House will vote on something, hopefully strong. We will have a conference committee and something will go to the President's desk. And long before that occurs, the Chinese will begin to step back from their unfair trade policies. So we can indeed win the trade argument with China. Some say it will create a trade war. It's already, we're in a trade war and we're losing. We're getting our clocks cleaned. But we can stop it. And this is the opportunity. Mr. President, every one of us has spoken to companies that make high-end products throughout our states, and that China competes unfairly and takes jobs and wealth away from America. We know that. No one disputes that. No one disputes they manipulate currency. No one disputes that they take jobs and wealth unfairly from America. The issue is what to do about it. Some say, talk to the Chinese. We've done that for 7 years. Some say have multilateral agreements. We've tried that. China just doesn't listen. The only way to get China to change its policies is by requiring them to, by putting in place a system that says if you don't, the consequences will be worse for you than if you do. That's how China operates. And unfortunately, my belief, the new leadership in China, without any reformers on the executive committee of the Politburo, will get worse, not better, unless we, together, Democrats and Republicans, say to China, enough is enough. American workers have said enough is enough. American businesses have said enough is enough. When is the Congress, when is this government going to say enough is enough, instead of just twiddling our thumbs and hoping and praying that China might change out of the goodness of their hearts? Well, the time is now. This is a unique opportunity, not simply to have a symbolic vote. Believe me, this is not at all political to me. Senator Graham and I have tried to keep this a bipartisan issue religiously for 7 years. To me, this is something that relates to the very future of our country, like educating our kids, like creating jobs so that the next generation has a better opportunity than this, like the greatness of America itself. We're in a tough world, we know that. But America always wins in a tough world. We compete and we survive. The only way we won't is if the deck continues to stay stacked against us. My colleagues, even up the playing field. This legislation will start us on the road to doing that so that our children and our grandchildren will have a better future than they will if we continue the present policies and let China take industry after industry after industry unfairly away from us. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I just learned that my friend, Senator Tom Coburn, has undergone surgery to treat prostate cancer. The junior senator from Oklahoma is expected to make a full recovery. His cancer was in the early stages, and he should be back to work in a few weeks. Senator Coburn has battled cancer twice before, and he's beaten the disease twice before. Those of us who know Tom Coburn know with a certainty that this fighter will beat it again. My thoughts are with Senator Coburn and his family, and I wish him a complete and speedy recovery. I understand how difficult a cancer diagnosis can be on the patient as well as the family. The entire Senate community is pulling for Senator Coburn, his wife Carolyn, their 3 children and 5 grandchildren.
The Senator from Iowa.
I want to take a few moments before we have a vote this afternoon to discuss a serious concern I have about the original stimulus package, and I want the Senate to consider my remarks and my research as we consider the President's latest modified so-called jobs bill, in actuality, stimulus bill number 2. I want to ensure that the taxpayers' money is spent responsibly on programs that create viable, long-term jobs, not lost to waste, fraud, and abuse. The marching orders for the stimulus funding under the Obama administration, viable, long-term jobs, not lost to waste, fraud, and abuse. The marching orders for the stimulus funding under the Obama administration have been spend now, chase later. But when governments spend money quickly, it leads to massive waste, fraud, and abuse. President Obama promised us that he would use, quote, the new tools that the Recovery Act gives us to watch the taxpayers' money with more vigor and transparency than ever before, end of quote. He also said, quote, if a federal agency proposes a project that will waste that money, he would put a stop to it, end of quote. It's past time for the President to live up to his words, because we all know, up till now, that certainly hasn't been the case. And I give several examples. A year ago, I asked the Department of Labor to explain why $500 million in green job training grants had been spent when the department had just asked the public to help them define just what a green job is. Now, over a year later, the Department of Labor's Inspector General issued an audit report showing that the President's promises are much different than reality. The reality is that only 8,000 program participants found employment, only 10% of the promised results. The reality is that $300 million still remains unspent in the program. The reality is that this money won't be spent and produce the jobs before the grants expire. But instead of learning from this failure and using this money for more effective job training, the administration continues to push good money after bad into so-called green jobs, which I don't think has actually even yet been defined this very day. The administration left much of Stimulus One oversight to the Inspector General offices of the respective departments, but has largely disregarded their findings and recommendations. I strongly support efforts of our Inspectors General, and am extremely frustrated that the administration ignores rather than enforces the recommendations of the various Inspector General. Thanks to the audit work performed by these IGs, I have also questioned the administration's ability to track stimulus funding after it was distributed to the first recipients. For instance, the Department of Education provided $1.7 billion to the state of New York, even though the Inspector General reported that the state has, quote, serious internal deficiencies, end of quote, that would make tracking the money extremely difficult. The Housing Urban Development Inspector General's office released a series of reports that question why additional funding was given to troubled housing authorities with significant financial and management problems. HUD Secretary Donovan stated that these housing authorities needed that money to improve their inventory and make needed upgrades. The weatherization program has also been fraught with waste. The Inspector General found that in many cases, contractors never did the work, and some work was so shoddy it endangered the health and safety of the owners. I continue to raise strong concerns about the Department of Energy's failure to monitor state and territory programs. I'm not aware that the administration has ever demanded any of the taxpayers' money back, even for the blatant cases of waste, fraud, and abuse. The administration also spent $84 million of the stimulus funding to establish the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board to guard against wasteful spending. The Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board can hold hearings and compel testimony about stimulus fund waste. I have referred 2 cases to this board, but so far it has refused to use this authority. The first case, the HUD's Inspector General's office questioned nearly $32 million of stimulus money spent by the Philadelphia Housing Authority to rehabilitate scattered site housing. According to the Inspector General's report, most of the work was never done, and the Housing Authority couldn't provide detailed invoices to show what the contractors were charging the government for. I also referred the $535 million loan guarantee from the Department of Energy to Solyndra because I understand that the board may have detected possible problems with the guarantee. So, President Obama made lots of promises about transparency and accountability when he asked Congress to pass the first stimulus bill. Before we consider giving him another over $400 billion, the President needs to turn his promises into reality, or it's the American taxpayers who will lose once again, even beyond the examples that I've already given. I urge my colleagues to oppose the motion to proceed to this latest modified tax and spend proposal that even the Washington Post has called, quote, unquote, political. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today, Mr. President, to talk about changing our Senate rules by a simple majority vote. That's what we did last week. And, Mr. President, as you know, the new classes that came in your year and the year after have worked on these rule change issues. And I have worked the last 2 years, been working to find a way for the Senate to break through the gridlock and to function on behalf of the American people, to focus like we're doing on this bill on jobs for the American people. And last week, the Senate took the step of changing our rules with a simple majority vote. This was done in accordance with the Constitution, Article 1, Section 5. The Senate has done this on many occasions in the past, and like those previous rule changes, the action taken last week was not intended to destroy the uniqueness of the Senate, but instead to restore the regular order of the body. So I applaud the majority leader for getting us back on track. The Senate should be focused on the jobs agenda of the American people, And Majority Leader Reid has put us on the right path. He may be forced to do this again, but it's important that he stay focused on that agenda and all of us stay focused on the jobs agenda of the American people. Mr. President, I ask that the rest of my statement be inserted in the record as if read.
Without objection.
And there is also a memorandum, a 2005 Republican memorandum from one of their policy committees that I would ask, it's mentioned in my statement, I would ask that that be inserted at the end of the statement.
Without objection.
And with that, I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Iowa.
Today, we're going to be
Senate is in a quorum call.
suggest the quorum call be called off.
Without objection.
Mr. President, today we're going to consider the nomination of Jane Margaret Trish Milazzo to be United States District Judge for Eastern District, Louisiana. Before I make my remarks regarding the nomination, I have to respond to some comments made on the floor last Thursday evening, because I'm really amazed and very disappointed by the continuing allegations that the Senate Republicans are delaying, obstructing, or otherwise blocking judicial nominations. One member stated that, quote, "We filibuster everything and require 60 votes on everything, including judges." That statement is without merit, and so I'm here to set the record straight. We are making very good progress in the consideration and confirmation of President Obama's judicial nominations. In fact, we've taken positive action on 84% of President Obama's judicial nominations. We heard from 5 judicial nominees in committee last week, reported 5 more to the floor, and continue to hold regular votes on judicial nominees. President Obama's circuit court nominees are waiting, on average, only 66 days to receive a hearing. Now compare that to the 247 days President Bush's circuit nominees were forced to wait. The same can be said for district court nominees, who have only waited 79 days under President Obama. Nominees for President Bush waited on average 100 days for a hearing. So you can understand why I'm disturbed, because some people say that there's a Republican effort not to cooperate on moving these judges. The reporting process has also favored President Obama's judicial nominees. On average, President Obama's circuit court nominees have only waited 116 days to be reported out of committee. President Bush's circuit court nominees waited over 369 days to be reported. District court nominees are no different. President Obama's nominees for the district courts have waited 129 days, while President Bush's district court nominees waited over 148 days. The accusations that we are filibustering or requiring 60 votes on everything, including judges, is not supported by the facts. We have confirmed 43 judicial nominees this year. With the vote today, we will have confirmed over 66% of President Obama's judicial nominees since the beginning of his administration. During our consideration of the 98 judicial nominees submitted during this Congress, there have been 2 cloture votes. One of those nominees was confirmed. The other was withdrawn. In the last Congress, there were 4 cloture motions made in relationship to 105 judicial nominations submitted. And I would remind my colleagues that at least 18 of President Bush's judicial nominations were subjected to cloture motions, many of them having multiple cloture votes. According to my count, there were approximately 30 cloture votes on Bush judicial nominees. Now, there's got to be a double standard here on the part of my colleagues that or somehow forget the history, or somehow don't know how to count, or sometime, if they do read the numbers, don't know what the numbers mean. Another colleague of mine stated last Thursday night that he could not remember a time during his long service in the Senate when judges would sit on the calendar 4 months. It was not that long ago, while the current majority party was in the minority, when qualified nominees sat on the Senate calendar for months. In most cases, when finally afforded a vote, they received unanimous support. These included Juan Sanchez, who was nominated for the Eastern District, Pennsylvania, William Duffy, who was nominated Northern District, Georgia, Mark Phillip was nominated Northern District, Illinois, Gary Sharp, who was nominated Northern District, New York, and James Robart, who was nominated Western District, State of Washington. These are just a few of President Bush's district court nominees who sat on the calendar for well over 3 months, yet received unanimous support in their confirmation votes. I wonder if my colleagues remember William Haynes, President Bush's nominee to sit on the Fourth Circuit. He waited 638 days on the Senate calendar in the 108th Congress alone before being returned to the President. All in all, Mr. Haynes has put his life on hold for 1,173 days without ever receiving an up or down vote. Another of President Bush's Circuit Court nominees, Raymond Kethledge, waited 23 months before being confirmed by the Senate, and then confirmed, can you believe it, on a voice vote. I'm not providing these facts to engage in a tit-for-tat, but when I hear colleagues misstate facts and don't understand numbers and can't count, I have to set the record straight. Shortly, we will vote on Jane M. Trish Milazzo, who is nominated to be the U.S. District Judge for Eastern District, Louisiana. She graduated magna cum laude with a bachelor's degree from Nicholls State University in '77, then worked for some time as an elementary school teacher before beginning to work in her father's law office. In 1992, Judge Trish Milazzo graduated with a Juris Doctorate from Louisiana State University, Paul M. Hebert Law Center. She spent the entirety of her legal career practicing at Risley Trish legal law firm, limited liability corporation, first as an associate and later to become a partner. In 2008, she was elected judge for Louisiana's 23rd Judicial District. She's a Louisiana State District Court judge for Division D of the 23rd Judicial District. She was the first female judge elected to that district bench. Judge Trish Milazzo received a unanimous qualified rating from the ABA Committee on the Federal Judiciary. So I'm pleased to support this fine nominee and thank her for her service. I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The Senate will vote on a measure shortly that would allow sanctions against countries that manipulate their currency, such as China. Then there'll be a vote on moving forward with the President's jobs bill, as changed by Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid. Senator Durbin sent a tweet a short time ago saying, let's pass the bill to get America back to work by encouraging employers to hire unemployed workers, which is in the President Obama's jobs bill. But despite that, Senator Durbin, who is the majority whip, has said that he does not believe that that the Senate has the 60 votes needed to break a filibuster on the legislation. Politico lists some of the Democratic members who may not vote to move forward on the revised jobs proposal. Senator Ben Nelson of Nebraska said last week that he'd vote to filibuster the plan. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia also is expected to vote against it. And Senator Jim Webb of Virginia announced on the Senate floor this afternoon that he would vote against cloture, saying the plan should have increased taxes on capital gains, not on earned income.
you.